This is Boomer Time, a proactive podcast for baby boomers, about baby boomers, and for people taking care of baby boomers. If that sounds like you, then you're in the right place. I'm Nancy Kogar, an elder law attorney and aging advocate, and this podcast was made just for you. Remember, though, the things we discuss here are not intended to be legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is established by this podcast. Hello, everybody. This is Nancy Kogar, and this is Boomer Time. I love that ocean wave sound. I just spent a glorious week up in Rhode Island along the Atlantic. Had a great time, but it's good to be back home. I have such great memories with my own father up there in Rhode Island. My family spent a lot of time up there in the summer. And my father, he loved sailing. And I remember a time when all the tall ships were in the U.S. and they were all anchored in Newport, Rhode Island. For those of you who are not familiar with the term tall ship, a tall ship is a large kind of traditionally rigged sailing vessel with those long masts and rope rigging all the way up to the top with the big broad sails. I started to think about Johnny Depp's movies, those pirate ships. That's kind of a big, tall ship. And if I remember correctly, all those ships were in the harbor, Newport Harbor, for the 200th anniversary of America's birthday in 1976. So back in 1776, that's when we became a country. So we were 200 years old back then. And that was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And the harbor kind of looked somewhat what I would imagine it would have looked like back in the colonial period. That and the fact that they were all crowded in the harbor together was amazing on its own. Vivid memories of that. That was a good memory with my dad. So on this episode of Boomer Time, we are going to take time to honor faithful fathers with Father's Day approaching. And I thought it might be helpful to share some ideas as to how you might do something helpful for your father this Father's Day, especially if he's aging and maybe having a harder time getting around. So that's what I aim to do with this episode. So I find that men, especially older men, can be reluctant to complain. You may disagree with me, but I think they have learned to keep a brave face. And they can often be reluctant to ask for help. And I'm talking boomers. So boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. So I'm on that cusp there. And a lot happened during that time period. That was the tail end of World War II, of course, but some of these men would have been those who served in the military during the Korean War or even in Vietnam. So if you were born during this time, you were part of that post-World War II population explosion. Everybody was having babies back then. And today, typically, you would be in your late 50s to 70s. So boomers collectively have worked very hard over the years. And as they age and pass away, it's a common statistic that the value of their estates represents the largest transfer of wealth in the history of America. That's significant. So as they age, those needs are also increasing, which is putting pressure on our healthcare industry, all kinds of things. So there are two reasons why I established Boomer Time, and you've heard it before, but I want you and your loved ones to be better prepared for what's ahead. This demographic of boomers is aging, and it's also known as the silver tsunami, which I use, and it's a metaphor used to describe the aging population, which started to reach the age of 65 back in 2011. So That demographic is going to have a massive expansion to the number of people living in the world over age 80. So, and people are living longer. So in 2020, here's a couple statistics for you. In 2020, there were 55.8 million people aged 65 and over in the United States. That would represent a little under 17% of the total population, which was up almost 40% from the 40.3 million in 2010. So that's just in one decade. And then the World Health Organization has forecasted that the number of people aged 60 and older worldwide will increase from 1 billion in 2020 to 1.4 billion in 2030 to a whopping 2.1 billion by 2050. So obviously, there's a need to be prepared. As I've talked about before, and I'll keep talking about, there is increased pressure on systems and supports, and you have to put a plan in place so that the people you trust can take care of you if and when you're not able to do that anymore. And unfortunately, I've talked about this before too, but 70% of people have no plan in place. No plan is planning to fail. So I'm hoping this Father's Day that maybe I can encourage some of you to encourage Dad and then maybe take some proactive steps in planning for his older years. And I'm going to share just a few ideas about how to do that. We're going to take a quick break. I want to remind you, though, that I want to buy you a cup of coffee, courtesy of me, Delicious Scooters Coffee. Visit my website, nancykogar.com, and send me your information and tell me why you would like a cup of coffee. And as I've said, coffee always leads to great conversations. So I'm hoping that coffee will lead to a great conversation, maybe with your dad, about planning for his future. And while you're there on the website, subscribe and ask to be on my newsletter. I handpick the articles that are in that newsletter because I know that these issues are important to you. So I want to get that information in your hands. So remember to visit my website, nancykogar.com, and I will be glad that you did, and hopefully you will be too. Alrighty, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about Father's Days and things you can do for your father this Father's Day that may help as he grows older. Be right back. Welcome back to Boomer Time. This is Nancy Kogar, and today we are talking about Father's Day. Father's Day is a day that falls on the third Sunday of June and celebrates the contributions that fathers and or father figures have had in their children's lives. So I want to talk more about how you might honor your father. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the origins of the holiday itself. I always find these things interesting. Did you know that Father's Day is not a federal holiday? That seems really strange to me. Of course, it does fall on a Sunday, but it's not a federally recognized holiday. Some states have recognized Father's Day as a recognized holiday, including Arizona, but not all states have officially recognized Father's Day as an official holiday. It's not a recognized holiday in Tennessee. I don't know, that just made me go, I just thought that was strange. But Father's Day originated as a memorial service, which was held for a large group of men, about almost 400, who were killed in a coal mining accident in West Virginia back in 1907. 362 miners, many of them fathers, were killed. And Father's Day was born out of that. Honoring our parents is important. Of course, there's a commandment in the Old Testament requiring us to honor our parents, and it is the first commandment with a promise attached to it that should we honor our parents, we will live a long life. Go back and look at Exodus 20. It's in there. And Ephesians 6 also includes a warning to mouthy and or sarcastic children who demean or belittle their parents, and that they are on a path to destruction. That's a pretty stern warning. Probably true, too. So generally honoring your parents, I know this is obvious, but go over it anyway, should include the following: showing love and respect, sharing activities together, passing on shared values to your own children, including those that your father fostered, like his life accomplishments and qualities. You know, my dad, who passed away a couple of years ago now, he was always very kind. People would tell him how kind he was. He was kind and patient, and I often hear people telling me I'm kind, and I think about my dad when they say that. So thank you. Well, and I recognize that relationships can be difficult, and not everyone has fond memories of their father or their mother. But they are people, which means they are imperfect. And on this Father's Day edition, I'm going to talk about ways to honor your father, even the imperfect ones. Okay? So I wanted to share a story first that I came across that really touched my heart, and I'm hoping that it touches yours as well. Found this in an old Reader's Digest. Yes, people still read those. That's where I found this. But okay, well, there was this father who died unexpectedly, and he was relatively young. He was 78 years old, and he was a good father, had many children, and he was loved by his family. So when he died, his family was crushed and really heartbroken, which was made worse by the unexpectedness of the father's passing. The family did arrange for a memorial service to honor their father. And that day came, and when they had the memorial service, friends, neighbors, the family were all gathered in the church for the celebration of their father's life. One daughter, in the middle of the service, felt her cell phone vibrating in her purse, which was embarrassing. And she thought, who in the world would be calling me now during my father's memorial service? She ignored it for the time, and then the memorial service went on as planned. So after the service was over, the daughter looked at her phone that had been buzzing, and do you know there was a text message there? And it read, "Hi, this is your dad. I just wanted to let you know that I made it home." Wow, right? It was a wrong number, but the message was still comforting, and the daughter took it as a sign that her father wanted them to know that he had completed his journey home to heaven. I like that thought too. So, how many fathers are there out there these days anyway? Did you know there are 121 million men over the age of 15 in the United States? That's according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the official reporting bureau of the United States. Among them, 75 million are fathers. That includes biological, stepfathers, and adopted children. So that's about 6 in 10 men. Most of them, around 61%, became dads in their 20s. Another 20% became dads between the ages of 30 to 34. Of the 35 million fathers in the country with children under 18, 1.7 million of them are single dads, in that they're living with a child with no spouse or partner present. And that's according to the Census Bureau as well. So in total, 46% of dads have children under 18. and the rest have adult children, which 1 in 4 are grandfathers. So that was all done by the Pew Research Center. And did you know that most dads say being a parent is rewarding and central to their identity? That's a good thing. But 63% said they spent too little time with their children. So if you've got a dad in your life who's still around, make sure to give him a call. I miss mine. So, Boomer Time is a podcast where I'm hoping that you will learn more about the issues that come with aging, and they can be complex, and I want you to be better prepared for those, along with help for you adult children out there who are finding yourself in that new and really difficult role as caregiver. I've been there. It's not an easy road to walk. Boomer Time hopes to provide resources, awareness, and encouragement. So I mentioned that I wanted to share something that maybe you could offer to your father on this Father's Day. And I want to share 7 commonly neglected problems that, when they are addressed, can have a positive impact on the quality of life of an older adult. So maybe your parents or you don't get around as well as you used to. You're not alone. And there's some things you can do to improve that circumstance and prevent it from becoming worse. So I wanted to talk about some of those, and maybe they'll give you some ideas about what you might do for your father this Father's Day. So fall prevention. Falls can almost always be prevented, and when they occur, they can have traumatic effects, even death. They often lead to further restrictions in activities, of course, and are a major reason that older adults find themselves no longer able to live at home. Did you know that you can install help with accessibility to help avoid falls? Did you know that opening up pathways in the house can also help? Maybe simply rearranging furniture. All of this is very simple, but it's ignored too often. And after a fall, the senior sometimes is no longer able to stay at home. So, did you know there are accessibility helps that are also considered spend down items? That means that when you make these improvements to the house so that an older adult can get around more easily, these expenses can be tallied against a future spend down that you might face if and when there may be a need for nursing home care and you're looking for help with Medicaid or TennCare at that point. This can be significant, and there are a lot of items on that list. It might surprise you. Well, I'm going to post that list on my website, nancykogar.com, so that it will be available for you. Check it out. There's some improvements there. Say you've got an old bathtub and people are stepping over it. You can put a walk-in shower in instead. So that's just one example, but there are a lot of things on there. 2 memory concerns. These also often go unevaluated. Sometimes I think it's fear that it might uncover a more serious cognitive disorder, and sometimes it does. Or maybe sometimes it's just plain old hard ground to tackle. Talking about it with your parents in a loving way can make an improvement in their quality of life. A cognitive evaluation can and does lead to a better determination as to the extent of a potential issue, and can, believe it or not, also uncover otherwise treatable conditions, including but not limited to foggy brain and other side effects that are from medications, thyroid problems, or even simple urinary tract infections, UTIs. Those can wreak havoc on older adults and change their personality drastically. And sometimes it's just a hearing problem that's the issue. They can't hear you and they're trying to fake their way through the conversation. My dad did that. And he had hearing aids, he just wouldn't wear them. So, depression. Depression, to some extent, is very common with those who are struggling with illness and involved with caregiving. Both can and are often socially isolating, and ignoring it won't help. A proper diagnosis can help, as medication can help with mood and even chronic pain. Sometimes when people are just in pain all the time, they get depressed. That makes sense. Urinary incontinence. Well, this one is so embarrassing, and I know no one wants to talk about it, but believe me, this is a very, very common issue with older adults, and not properly addressing it can lead to social isolation and just simply limit physical activities. Did you know, and I'm sure you probably do, but there are all kinds of products out now and medications that can help with this. You can even have those delivered to your home. So you don't have to worry about anybody seeing you buy those things at CVS or the local grocery store. And they can be heavy anyway. They're tough to negotiate. So you can order them and they can be delivered for you. I know people who do that all the time. Pain. 50% of adults 65 and older experience some pain every month, and it's usually in multiple places on their body. Talk about limiting your day, right? Persistent pain is linked to decreased social and physical activities and depression. I've already mentioned that. Not being able to get around also leads to a decrease in an individual's ability to take care of their own health. That just makes sense. You can't shower as much. You may not be able to tend to your hygiene as much. You may not be able to get to your medication. You may not be able to cook as much as you used to. Isolation and loneliness. A recent study found that 43% of older adults report feeling lonely. I think it's probably much higher than that, especially since I spend a lot of time with these guys. People need engagement and purpose, and they need to know that they matter. Polypharmacy. Then that simply means just taking too many medications or a lack of proper medicine management. Talk to your doctor about that. Don't make decisions about your medicine on your own, please. CDC reports that every year almost 200,000 older adults visit the ER due to medication issues. Boy, that's a lot. So, if you've noticed any of these issues with your parents or even a spouse, you might find some time to talk about it with them. And it may seem scary, but if you approach it with the right manner and tone, remember tone's important, it can result in some improvements in your loved one's daily quality of life. And that's what it's all about, right? You may find that they want to talk about it too. If it's hard, be honest about the difficulty of bringing it up and that you love them. Here's another approach. Ask questions and listen to the responses. Take time before responding. Here are some sample questions. How can I help you? If you notice something needs to be done around the house, maybe say, hey, I'm off on Sunday. How about I come over and let's work on blank together? How would that be? Ask, what do you need? What do you want? Not, what do you want? What do you want, Mom? What do you want? What's most important to you? What are you thinking about? I think those are all good questions. So you can also talk to them, of course, I'm going to say this, about the importance of making some planning decisions and starting that conversation. As I've said many times before, and I will say again and again, estate planning needs to be done while someone has the capacity to enter into those types of planning. You can't do it after you've declined. You've got to have the requisite capacity. And we sometimes demand doctor's letters to prove that. So these documents become active oftentimes upon incapacity. And they are also durable so that they will not lapse based on that decline. And the benefit is you will have someone that you trust with that decision making and the authority to make those decisions in place before you need that help. I've seen it on the other side, folks. You don't want to be there. Well, I hope that inspires you to think about some of the things you could do for your father this Father's Day. I thought there were some good ideas in there. So I'm just going to take a final quick break. And when I come back, I'm going to have some encouraging words and I'm going to talk about my coffee giveaway. I'll be right back. So I'm going to ask you to visit my website, nancykogar.com, because if you give me your info, tell me why you like the show, I want to pick someone to buy a cup of coffee because I believe coffee leads to great conversations, and maybe you can take your dad for a coffee, right? Talk about some of these things we've talked about. And I will buy you that coffee courtesy of me, of course, but also Scooters. I love their coffee. Good coffee. So go to my website, nancykogar.com. You can also ask to be on my newsletter. I hand select those articles because I am looking at them and see what they say, and it has information that you need in them. So that is why I'm putting that in there. So it's free. It's free. Okay. All you have to do is just tell me where to send it. And you can also see my other episodes of my podcast. You can reach me and make an appointment, ask to make an appointment with me. You can do that too. I always forget to mention that, but I can help. We can talk about helping. The podcast, well, we're almost up to episode 30. We're getting up there. So you can see those on my website, and you can also find those on Spotify. And we are now on YouTube, folks. That is exciting. So follow us, and you will not miss a future episode. And we've got lots of interviews scheduled and interesting topics to talk about. If you've got a question or a topic that you'd like to talk about or like more information on, let me know about it. Might make a good show. I like getting those emails. So, well, I wanted to share a few final thoughts on the impact fathers have on our lives. And found a few, and I liked them, so I thought they're worth sharing. The first says, anyone can be a father, but it takes someone special to be a dad. And that's why I called you Dad, because you are so special to me. Yeah, good dads. A good father will leave his imprint on his daughter for the rest of her life. Remember I told you my dad was kind? I saw that and I thought about my dad. Dads are most ordinary men turned into heroes, adventurers, storytellers, and singers of song. I don't know if all men sing, but some do. My husband sang to me at our wedding. How about that? He's got a good voice too. My father didn't tell me how to live. He lived and let me watch him do it. That's a good one, right? So, what kind of man does not give up his time, his many pleasures, but hands them over without a sound? What kind of man bends to hold them in their suffering, in their questions, in their garbled turn of a phrase? What kind of man admits his failures, turns over his heavy stones, stands at the feet of grief, and wanting doesn't turn away? What kind of man becomes a father, a lasting place, a steady ship inside a tireless storm? Hey, we started talking about ships at the beginning, so circle back to those ships, those tall ships. Yeah, they're steady ships. Check them out. They're interesting, and they don't get out that often. So, finally, what's the difference between a man and a father? It is that a man shares his genes, DNA, right? And a father gives his life. So true. Well, I want to wish all you men out there and those taking care of your older fathers or spouses, I want to wish you a very happy Father's Day. Please know that you are important to me, and I do this podcast in part because I want to help and I want to build community, and I want you to know that there are resources available and you matter. So with that, I hope you have a very happy Father's Day. Give your father a hug this Father's Day. I miss hugging my dad. So, all right, people. Well, I will see you next week, okay? And I look forward to talking with you further. Have a good week.